the name that's number 5 on your trade targets board, well, it's not a name, it's a draft pick. I want to talk, it is draft day, about maybe some potential movement in the top 10 of this draft. And all the attention, it seems right now, is on the Montreal Canadiens at number 5. Take me through that situation. Is it a they want to trade down? Is it a they're going to see how the first 4 picks play out and then make their decision from there? Are they looking to maybe outright move the pick? What's going on?
No, I think they certainly want to try and remain in the top 10 or so if they can. But what I think they're looking at right now is the fluidity of the draft board. And I truly believe that as they're weighing what I believe are as many as 5 different options or deals on the table and offers for that number 5 pick, is to see what develops. I think they have their eye, I think, on one player in particular. And if he were to go off the board before then, they think that they might, I'm guessing they think that they might be able to move a little bit further down the board and still get the next player that they want on their list, potentially of, sort of equal value. And if another team values moving into that top 5 spot more than they do, I think they'd seize on that opportunity. So the Habs certainly not looking to, get out of the first round or anything like that. It would have to be a pretty special move, I think, even just to move up a few spots, given the value of these picks and where teams perceive it. But nonetheless, in a draft year and draft board that's fascinating, you hear tons of rumblings out there. Scouts were buzzing on Tuesday night saying, hey, is it possible that the Anaheim Ducks could take Matvei Michkov at 2? I mean, look, Pat Verbeek has been saying for weeks and months now that they're taking a center. To see a pivot, I mean, he'd be one of those guys in Steve Yzerman style to maybe go down that path. I still think they go Fantilli. So my prediction is Bedard 1, Fantilli 2, Karlsson 3, Smith 4. Then where does Matvei Michkov go? I have a feeling he ends up at the end of the day with the Flyers, but I don't have a real strong sense. And that's the best part about this is I'm not bullshitting anyone because the teams don't know themselves.
Yeah, like it's weird to be sitting here on draft day and have the situation still seem as fluid as it is. All eyes on Michkov when it comes to the draft board. But let's get to maybe just some news and notes.
Yeah, a quick one. David Kampf has re-signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. 4-year deal, $10 million, so $2.5 million AAV. And Kampf was an interesting guy because I think a lot of people assume that if he made it to market, that he'd be one of those guys that could potentially be back with Kyle Dubas on the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the Maple Leafs get a piece of business done on Wednesday morning. Kampf staying in Toronto. He was certainly on our top 50 free agents, a guy that just seemed to fit really well with the Leafs. Some versatility coming off a 27-point season.
Let's keep talking about news we got today. Ross Colton is on the move out of Tampa Bay. The Colorado Avalanche acquiring the pending RFA in exchange for the 37th overall pick, a pick they got yesterday by trading Alex Newhook to the Montreal Canadiens. I think this is an awesome piece of work by Avs GM Chris McFarland. You give up Newhook, you give up pick, 37, or I guess you didn't really have it. Yeah, but you get pick 31 and Colton for Newhook.
Right. Yeah, essentially
it's great work.
To. It gives you some versatility, as we just mentioned. And what it does really is spells the end of JT Compher's run in Colorado, because now when you look at Colton, a guy that can play center, can play wing, essentially what you can do with your lineup now is you've got McKinnon in the 1 spot. Then you can go with Ryan Johansson at 2 and then put Ross Colton at number 3 center, and fits your cap. Fits, they've got to sign Colton now, and that's the next part of the puzzle. But to get him in a role that you feel 3C, second line wing, whatever it might be, you've got lots of different options for Colton, and your team is probably pretty well set up down the middle.
Yeah, I thought that was a really nice piece of work. Also, we're going to talk about Calgary in a little bit with our pal Ryan Pinder, but they got Yegor Sharangovich.
Yeah, Sharangovich signed this morning, 2 years, $3.1 million AAV in Calgary. So, quick work to get that done after the Toffoli trade on Tuesday night. And so, the Flames have a nice little, third line piece that they can plug right into the mix.
We're just waiting on our pal Ryan Pinder. We're going to talk a little bit more Calgary Flames. But Frank, we got some questions in the YouTube chat. So let's get into it here. Drop them in there if you're watching on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. J-Rock is in and says, am I the only one that sees O'Reilly going to Detroit, reunite with Perron, live close to his family in Toronto? Any landing spots? Like, it's weird because we're so draft focused, but free agency is like 4 days away. What's the market for O'Reilly?
It's actually 3.
Yeah, 3. Sorry.
It's crazy how quickly this week goes by. There's so many things happening. I think O'Reilly would be a decent fit, and obviously Steve Yzerman has shown that he's not afraid to, to go to free agency and add. You saw the guys that he picked up last year in Sherratt and Kopp. Personally, I'd be concerned with O'Reilly about the term. Like, I think he's a guy whose game has really slowed down a bit. The ultimate competitor. And are the Red Wings looking to boost their team down the middle? For sure. I'd be real curious at what term and what dollars, because I think he's more one of those guys that feels like a nice final piece of the puzzle fit, as opposed to a guy that's really going to try and drive a team back into the playoffs.
Tyler Mulick wants to know about Erik Karlsson. The line you gave on the DFO rundown, which is available now if people want some more draft day content, the line you used was, it feels like it's now or never.
That's what this summer feels like for Erik Karlsson. Look, I know that the Sharks have had a few teams call. I know the Toronto Maple Leafs were one of them. I wonder about the Seattle Kraken. But for a defenseman coming off of a 100-point season that has had significant injury trouble before, what happens if somehow he goes back to being a 60-point guy next season and teams are looking at him and saying, this is the highest paid defenseman in the league with significant term left on his deal? We have zero interest at all if he just goes back to being a sort of, average or more average NHL defenseman instead of, a Harlem Globetrotter that he was last season. So that's of consideration and concern. Got to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
But here's the complicating factor. I think the Sharks have capped the idea of retaining salary on Karlsson at somewhere around 20%. They don't really want to go beyond that. So, Mike Greer was saying at his press availability on Tuesday, anyone thinking that we're going to retain 50% on Karlsson, you're dreaming.
To me, that feels a bit foolish to not sit there and say, this is our summer to trade him. Let's keep half and actually get something here and help our rebuild along. Like, you're not going to need that cap space for the next few years.
That's exactly what I would be doing. I've said all along, the Sharks have not properly valued the ability to get off of Erik Karlsson's contract and create more cap flexibility. So if you're asking a team to take on $9.3 million is what 20% would be. I mean, how many teams can actually afford that? How many teams would need to carve out $9 million off of their current roster in order to make it work, plus then pay the assets required to get him from San Jose? I still think it's a long shot. I peg Erik Karlsson's chances to get traded at 10%, not much more than that. And
if he falls back to a 60, 70 point D-man next year, good luck ever moving it.
That's now or never.
Yeah. 100%.